Today we are going to discuss a very important topic, cleaning our air for a greener and healthier future. So before we start, I would like to give the floor to Pak Darsono Hartono as the chair for Kadin Net Zero Hub to give the opening remarks and share a little bit about ISF 2024. Please give a round of applause to Pak Darsono.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this clean air session. My name is Darsono Hartono. I'm actually representing the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce today. I'm the head of the Kadin Net Zero Hub as well as the Carbon Center of Excellence. I think we just want to share with you in terms of what the business communities are doing for the world. So the idea is, Indonesia as a third most populous country in the world, some people say that we're the problem, but we want to present that we are the solution. So it's very important for us in this COP through all, things that you hear, that you listen to. I think this panel is going to give you an idea of what Indonesia is all about, working together with a lot of our partners. So I also want to invite people. Actually, last September we had a very successful Indonesia Sustainable Forum. So I think we want to welcome that again this year. I want to invite everybody to come to Indonesia for this exciting moment. I think the 3 days event was more than 600 international attendees and more than thousands of people coming in. In the meantime, in Kadin, we do a lot of things in terms of working together with international organizations and see what we can do. One of them is we work with our partner Systemic, which is will be in the panel later, to look into the breakthrough effect of what kind of industry. I know that people hear a lot Indonesia is one of the largest producer of nickel. And I think these things will be the future, talking about mineral, critical mineral. And I think they say that the EV have to pass to Indonesia. For EV to work in the world, it has to pass to Indonesia. You'll probably hear it later from our colleague. So I just want to welcome all the panelists today. Thank you for participating to this exciting event. And I wish everybody well for this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you Pak Darsono for the opening remarks. And of course in Kadin we always support the inclusivity to support the accelerated green code and cleaner air in Indonesia. So for now, let's call our distinguished speakers from across the ecosystem. Allow me to introduce Mark Meldrum. Please give a round of applause for Mark. Mark is a partner at Systemic and the lead author of the breakthrough effect in ASEAN, which we also become the releaser together, supported by BISOS Earth Fund. So now the second speaker is from the philanthropy and think tank side. We have the Deputy CEO of Bloomberg NEF, Albert Chung. Give a round of applause to Mr. Albert. So Albert has spent 14 years at BNEF looking into low carbon transition, zero emission transport, working with a lot of stakeholders to accelerate the adoption. Finally, from the Sustainable Energy for All, we have Kanika, the Chief of Staff of Sustainable Energy for All, who will ensure our discussion we will not neglect the just transition and the local manufacturing. And lastly, our own Wakil Ketua Umum from Kadin, bidang SDM, Bapak Solihin Kala. Mr. Kala is chairing Kala Group in mobilizing the biggest hydropower for clean energy power generator in Indonesia. All right, so let's start with Mark to set the scene. So Mark, can you please share the work that you have done with Kadin Net Zero Hub on the breakthrough effect in ASEAN? What are the key opportunities for ASEAN in Indonesia on the transport sector? And what are the conditions that needs to happen to accelerate the adoption of the EV in the region? Floor is yours.
Thank you. We actually have some slides. Where's Nick? How are we controlling this? Okay, so as a good consultant, I came with slides. I'm going to try to provide a bit of a scene setter here, starting from the broader energy transition, but then focusing in on electrification of road transport, given what we're talking about today is driving that sector forward as one of the contributors towards clean air. So the concept that we're going to apply here, which is not a new thing, but is essentially market tipping points, right? So in climate, we hear a lot about negative climate tipping points where the ecology will tip and start to accelerate in a bad direction. What we're talking about here is market tipping points where net zero solutions can start to outcompete existing high carbon solutions, and then that sector tips, and that solution begins to be adopted at an accelerated pace, and that's what this chart on the left is trying to show. So we've seen this historically in all sorts of different types of solutions outside of the clean energy transition. So in adoption of road and railways and gas pipelines, but also consumer infrastructure like dishwashers and cars over horses, et cetera. So this is not a new concept. This is how the economy works. But the idea is to figure out how we can use this attribute of how the economy works to accelerate the energy transition. And so what that boils down to is this question of where is the market tipping point and how do we make it appear faster? How do we make it happen faster, right? So how do we get to a place where the net zero solutions that we're trying to adopt, like electric two-wheelers, electric buses, solar and storage, are selected by buyers because they are just better solutions, right? And when we say better solutions, there's three components that we break this down into. One is affordability, the obvious one, kind of cost. Is it cost competitive? The second is attractiveness, which is basically non-cost metrics, right? So the user experience of owning an electric two-wheeler or car, is that a better experience than an internal combustion engine? Charging would be a key component. And accessibility. And so this is, okay, if you want it because it's cost competitive, it's a better experience, can you actually get it and use it, right? So in the context of road transport, charging infrastructure is a big part of this. So that's the key overarching question. Now let's jump into, just to say briefly, we wrote this report that was released last week called Breakthrough Effect ASEAN, and it tries to answer the question, where are the near-term opportunities to trigger some of these net zero tipping points in the ASEAN region? And we've focused in on 6 sectors, which are the ones that you see in the box on the left. So power, i.e. solar and wind plus storage, electric 2-3-wheelers, electric buses, industrial heat, as served by industrial heat pumps, and also heat batteries that can get to higher temperatures, zero carbon shipping, and minerals refining using clean energy. And these 6 sectors we think are ripe to get to net zero tipping points soon. They're basically the low-hanging fruit. Now, that's not to say they're everything. They're absolutely not. The whole right-hand side of the page and more is critically important. But we think that these are ones that we could, really go after today and trigger those tipping points in the near term. So let's jump into the ones that are relevant to what we're talking about today. So electric two-wheelers in road transport. Some key points here. There are other geographies that have already reached a tipping point in this sector. So in China, Albert, I'm sure will have the numbers, but the share of sorry, I don't know if that's true. The share of electric two-wheelers, the share of two-wheelers that are sold as electric, I think, is north of like 70 or 80%. 20% of two-wheelers in the world are sold in ASEAN. So this is a critical region for electrifying two-wheelers. And of those, half are sold in Indonesia. So a full 10% of electric two-wheelers are sold in the world are sold in Indonesia. So then how do we get to a place where we can tip this sector and have a lot of those two-wheelers be sold as electric? And so the chart you see at the top right is looking at the cost side of things. So the first two bars are total cost of ownership, and what you can see is actually electric two-wheelers are already competitive on a total cost of ownership basis, but this is not the primary determinant for buyers. Often sticker price matters more. And so here you see that it is still a higher sticker price, but there are certain key things that we can do to bring that down. So first and foremost, reducing battery costs, which will happen at a global level and is happening, but also localizing that, for example, with local manufacturing. Second would be financing subsidies. So financing costs for these things can be very high. You could think about things like the government providing a guarantee to banks so that they can finance out at lower rates, for example. A third might be reduced VAT, or just fully eliminating VAT on electric two-wheelers, again, to bring the price down. And then others, for example, might be new models like battery swapping so that you don't actually have to pay for the battery up front. Again, all of these things bring down the cost. And then so that's all on the cost side of the equation, but then there are also important things under accessibility, for example, like building out charging infrastructure, which, some countries will think of this as a chicken and the egg. I've heard people respond to that as actually the electric vehicles are coming, the charging infrastructure, is typically lagging and really just needs to be there. Otherwise, we're going to see some serious crunch points and some serious consumer pain from having these electric vehicles and not being able to charge them. So just quickly on buses, it's a very similar story, so I'm not going to enumerate all of the points, other than to say one of the key business models to unlock electric buses is buses as a service provided to transport authorities. Because often they don't have the balance sheets to be able to pay for these very expensive electric buses up front. And so that's going to be an important part. And then minerals refining. Now, why are we talking about this in context of electric vehicles? The point is batteries, right? So as referenced, this is important not just from an ASEAN level, but a global level, given the volume of nickel refining, mining and reserves that sit within ASEAN. So this is both about developing that nickel mining and refining to serve a growing domestic market, if we can move those two previous sectors, but also about serving the global market. And the key point here is the global market is looking for electric vehicle supply chains to be decarbonized. So that refining process that is incredibly energy intensive, to be selling into places like Europe that have tracking on embedded carbon, right? So like how much carbon was produced in this good that I'm importing, like a battery from Indonesia, for example. It therefore becomes incredibly important to have that value chain be decarbonized, to use clean electricity and clean heat in those refining processes. And then the last thing I'll say is these sectors are not independent of each other, okay? They all interact. And so when we create one tipping point, that can help us accelerate other sectors as well. So just to call out, if we can move on electrification of road transport, that obviously pushes demand for electricity, which supports in deploying solar and storage to provide low-cost clean electricity. And similarly, if we can move on minerals refining, that also creates demand for electricity. And then as that lower-cost solar and storage comes in, that scales up, gets cheaper. We get cheaper electricity to run our electric vehicles on, and you kind of see how the two interact and provide this reinforcing loop. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And since Pak Rahmat Kaimudin is here, he is the Deputy of Infrastructure and Transportation Coordination at the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime and Investment Affairs. I would like to give Pak Rahmat the stage to share a little bit on the opening remarks and ISF 2024. Pak Rahmat Kaimudin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends. I think, in COP, typically we talk about climate change. We basically talk about greenhouse gases, which is CO2. We haven't really spent that much time thinking about the sibling, which is pollution. And why I said it's siblings, because they come from the same parents, which is combustion. So if you solve the combustion issue, burning fossil, CO2 will be resolved, but you also can solve basically the air quality. So I think the topic today is very, very important. And of course, if we don't do anything about it, we all feel affected, will be affected. Everyone breathes the same air, and we also know where all those pollutants come from. In Indonesia, at least in Jakarta, we have done some studies, and the source of air pollutions in Jakarta is basically multiple things, mostly transportation, some power plants, some industries, but it's also about waste burning. And all of those are very, very related to human activities. We need to make sure that, we need to explain what causes the air pollution. We need to probably change the lifestyle, and we need the support from industry to make sure that happens. Because this is going to take a long time. Air quality is, I would say, what they call time-dependent multi-factor problems. It's like obesity. It created over time because of lifestyle. And you cannot just say, I'm going to fast for one day and it will be resolved. You need to change your lifestyle. Everyone need to change our lifestyle. We need to change our behavior to make sure that we can resolve this issue. But we have the technology. Electrification of transport is ongoing. We started having the technology to generate more power, and hopefully moving forward, we also can put better scrubber, better qualities of fuel to make sure that air quality is getting better. So yeah, I commend everyone here to discuss this, raise the issues, try to find solutions, and we in the government of Indonesia is very open to hear and start this journey. Hopefully, before the new administration, we'll live with better roadmap, better regulation, so that it can be continued moving forward. So good luck, and looking forward to hear the panels. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rahmat, for the opening remarks, and likewise, Kadin will always support a great initiative from the government, like ISF, and hoping to see you all in ISF next year. So coming back to the panels from Albert. So Albert, we have seen some of the framework that has been clearly mapped out by Mark, that some significant numbers, Mark, 10%, that's quite high, that's quite shocking for me, from Indonesia only. So from your experience, obviously BNEF has been having a lot of engagement with stakeholders. How can EV adoption help the cities having a cleaner air? Maybe you can share a bit, and what do you think about the tipping points that has been shared by Mark earlier, specifically on the EV adoption?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Pat Rahmat, for your kind and thoughtful remarks. And thank you to Kadin and for CMMIA for inviting me to join you today. I really appreciate the chance to speak to you all. So I represent BNEF, which is a research organization focused on low carbon transition. We've had the pleasure of working with Kadin and partnering with CMMIA over the last couple of years. And I want to maybe build on Mark's, the S-curve, because I think the S-curve is a really powerful construct, which we observe in many different sectors. And globally, where we are on the S-curve in terms of electrification of transport is, we're at 15% of global sales of passenger cars being electric now, 15%. So we're in the steep part of that S-curve. We're going fast now. And I remember when it was 0%, 0.5%. You know, those were long years, but now we're in the fast part of the curve. But that global S-curve is made up of lots of regional and country S-curves and different S-curves for different segments, whether it's two-wheelers and buses and et cetera. So where we see that S-curve in the ASEAN region is still in the early days, but in those early days, things move very, very fast. So passenger EV sales in ASEAN last year tripled. So globally, this year they'll grow by 30%, but last year it tripled, 200% growth last year across ASEAN. But it's hitting 2%, so still very much in the early days of that curve. But thanks to those tipping points that Mark spoke about, we think ASEAN region will hit probably 14 or 15% by the end of this decade in terms of passenger EV sales. So it's very much fast following what's happening in other markets around the world, be it Europe or China that you mentioned. On two-wheelers, it's still very early days. I think it's still less than 1% of sales. It might have moved a bit more this year. But some markets are showing the way. Actually, Vietnam is at 15%. Two-wheelers are sold in now electric vehicles, which really shows what can be done under the right conditions. And then on buses, we saw a huge acceleration last year. There were 1,200 e-buses sold across ASEAN last year, which was 6 times more than the year before. So we're talking 500% growth in a year on e-buses. And we now see more commitments from groups like Transjakarta, of course, Vingroup and others across the region, really accelerating e-bus adoption. And I think as battery costs come back down, we now see battery costs returning to a downward slope. Battery costs went up last year, now they're falling again. That's only going to drive faster adoption and so on. And then the last point maybe on the air quality piece, because I think that's kind of what we're here to talk about. Clearly, this is not just about climate and carbon, it's also about local air pollution. I saw an article that said that globally there are 8 million deaths associated with air pollution every year, which is a staggering amount. I think that's actually much more than road accidents, by the way. And we know that SOx and NOx and particulates, from internal combustion engines are a huge contributor to that. So that move towards electrification can eliminate a huge driver. It doesn't eliminate all of it. We need to think about tires, for example. EV tires will wear more quickly because they're heavier vehicles, and actually rubber is a major source of particulates as well. But there's innovation there as well, and there are companies working to even remove those emissions. So I think there's huge potential here, and really excited to see those S-curves keep growing. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Albert. The S-curves, always sexy to see that in our industry. And of course, like you mentioned, the boom of electricity transition to clean mobility is gonna happen anytime soon. So get ready, folks. So Kanika, now coming back to the opportunities, as we know, all of this clean mobility revolution, this will also create a lot of sustainable investment in the local manufacturing, creating jobs. So maybe you can speak a little bit from SE, Sustainable Energy for All, from your view, like what do you think Indonesia or ASEAN in the region-wise look on this as an opportunity and be part of the trade?
Thank you so much. And also, thank you very much for having me in this beautiful pavilion. It's really very lovely. And we're so excited to be working closely with the Indonesian government as well as with Kadin Net Zero Hub. And I think that this conversation especially is really refreshing when you think about it in the context of all the other discussions where we are really focusing quite a lot from the supply side, but by focusing on air pollution, we're really making this a people-centered discussion and how it affects real human lives. And in reality, at least to my mind, the energy transition is the largest economic opportunity of our times. And if we kind of, if countries started to think about, and industry started to get the signals as well from countries to say, this is not just about a stick in terms of what you cannot do, but it's about an opportunity to serve local communities, to create new jobs in countries that have a very young median age, as well as to become large participants in the global energy market. Several of the countries within the ASEAN and developing countries more generally have been locked out of the global energy markets where they've been left to be price takers rather than price makers. Except now we have the opportunity, and especially in the context of electric vehicles where so much of that demand is coming from the ASEAN region, and there are preferential trade agreements that allow for that demand to be served almost beneficially or preferentially by local businesses, that this is a really big opportunity to address some of the inequities that have plagued our economies. So I think it's really important to kind of reframe this conversation. And so many congratulations to Kadin for already starting to do this. In terms of renewable energy manufacturing, the SE for All, which is a international organization with close links to the United Nations, our aim really is to support emerging economies and developing countries around the world to keep as much of the benefit of the energy transition in-house or in country, or in region, in kind of that prioritization order. And so to this end, we launched early last year the Renewable Energy Manufacturing Initiative, which we have now quite actively operational in Africa and are in early stages of operationalizing this also in Southeast Asia, which is to really map out what are the direct, indirect, and induced levers that we can take advantage of. So the focus, of course, is on solar PV, lithium-ion batteries, and electric vehicle manufacturing and assembly. But also taking on a more cooperation approach to say which are the countries where the minerals lie. And you know, Mark was talking earlier about the mineral reserves being so rich in this region, but which are the countries that have the refining capabilities that are able to do this also in sustainable ways so that they're able to kind of play the long game in some ways and adhere to some of the border adjustment requirements that several countries have been placing, as well as then thinking about how are the local communities that have been custodians of these minerals, how can they participate more fully? So really putting a human face to the transition, but also combining that with who has a competitive advantage for the mining, for the processing, as well as then for the assembly. And in Indonesia, specifically in the two-wheeler market, there is a lot of competitive advantage. And then we're seeing also the demand signals from the region to which Indonesia is already responding. The vehicle industry, I think, is especially very interesting in the ASEAN region because it's a little bit of a push and pull kind of scenario that we're seeing. There are the demand signals to clean industry, to clean electric vehicle manufacturing, but there are also the incumbents. And some of the incumbents have moved quite fast, but then some of the incumbents are also holding progress back because they're quite large employers and things like this. But the big opportunity here is to say that because we are developing economies, we are talking about a region that is entirely the energy demand and the electric vehicle demand and kind of the whole related value chain demand is only growing. We don't yet need to necessarily think about as much of the displacement, as much as of the new stock. And I think this is kind of the point that Albert was making, is that can we just focus on the new stock so that we get to the point where the cost or the unit economics are compelling enough for the phase out to happen almost automatically. It will be good economics to do electric vehicles rather than just thinking also from an ideological point of view. And this is why Kadin has such an important role to play, because to get to the scale that is required, it will have to be a market-based approach. Of course, with the right levers and signals and benefits that the government is already, as you said, in Indonesia offering. So I think that we really need to think about this from a competitiveness, job creation, and local communities point of view, but then also think about what are the delivery mechanisms and financial models that can help deliver this in ways that is actually cost competitive as well, because there's no other way we would reach scale.
Absolutely, Kanika. And in Kadin, we are a big believer in small, medium enterprise. So when you touch that, of course, I think this will something that gonna create a lot of multiplier effect in our economy. So coming back to our last panelist, Mr. Solin Kala, which is also the president director of Kala Group. What do you think, Chief, about how clean power generators can set the rhythm in the private sector? Because now Kala Group has an operational biggest hydropower in the Indonesia. If I'm not mistaken, around half gigawatt, and I've been seeing a lot of news that it will go through to surpass 1 gigawatt, like in the next 2 or 3 years. So maybe you can share your experience, even before people are, become a believer on this clean air, ESG thing. How can a private sector can participate to become part of this green growth movement, especially in the clean power generation sector? Floor is yours, Chief.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity, Anthony. So let me tell you the story. No one, not many people realize that Indonesia has large scale of hydropower plants currently. So begins in early 2000, year 2000, 2001. We and my family, Color Group is a family group actually, a family company. So we have to move on. I mean, we have to think that we need something good for the nation, for Indonesia, but has a big impact to the world. So it comes up with okay, just do the hydropower plants. Nation needs energy. At the same time, the world needs clean air. We need clean air. So anyway, in 2004, we start construction without any support from the banks, any support from the PLN, from the national power company. And finally, we got support from them just 3 years before the completion, which is we complete our plan in 2011. We send out the power to the national grid in 2011. So since then, become addicted. You know, it's okay. Let's do more some clean energy, clean energy. So it runs in our blood already, right? So right now, alhamdulillah, we already have about 605 megawatts currently, and by next year we will add around 500. No, about another 500, and our target in 2035 we will add another 800. So we'll sum up total of 2,000 something megawatts. So our big plan is to have a ecosystem, green ecosystem, to produce green nickel, green battery, green. We have talked to some global players such as EGA or something. We are planning to produce green aluminum. So the end plan is to have green electric vehicle finally, not current EV which is produced from the coal, you know. So anyway, what I'm saying is the message is wherever you are, if you want to do change the climate, just do it without any helping, without any banks. From my experience, we don't get any help from the banks. We don't get help from the government, but we just got help from the family and friends. So just do it. So that's the job of the leader, just to convince and to tell success story to the world. Thank you.
All right, so just like some apparel brand, I like your motto, Pak. Just do it. So because of the constraint of time, maybe I would like to ask one last question to the panelists before we go to Q&A. I think and I believe you have heard that Indonesia has successfully held ISF, which is the Indonesia Sustainability Forum this year. So my question is, since Pak Rahmat, which is the champion of ISF, is here, will you come to ISF next year? And what topic that you expect ISF to hold next year? Maybe starting from Mark.
Yes, absolutely. Of course. And I think picking up on this point, clean manufacturing, clean supply chains in the EV space, but also more broadly, would be the topic.
I'm not sure. Can I just give the same answer, or what are the rules?
Say electric vehicles.
I'll be there if you're there.
There is a lot of derivative of an answer, so I hope you can be creative enough to enrich the melting point of discussion.
Anthony, I will be there if you're there, okay? Yeah? Okay.
All right, Albert is in the house.
And I think, so definitely the EV supply, the whole value chain, and I think that will be an important topic. And actually, I saw a little bit of the panel before this, which was all about ecotourism, and I think the nature and biodiversity agenda is clearly incredibly strong in Indonesia, something that we at BNF are spending a lot of time on as well. So would love to engage on that topic too.
Thank you, Albert. And like you say, I go, you go. So we'll see you in the ISF next year. Kanika?
Yes, definitely. Any reason to be in Indonesia, and this is a really good one. But I think that the topic that would be really useful in combination with the supply chain issue as well as perhaps biodiversity is the point that Mr. Kala's kind of raised, is that how can the financial ecosystem be leveraged in a way that there are many Kala groups? And so that there is scale in doing this, right? I mean, of course, it's really exemplary what you have already been able to do. But in order to do it at the pace that is required to really serve the people of Indonesia and the people of ASEAN and then the people of the world, I think it requires that the ecosystem work together. So I think that would be a really valuable addition as well.
Thank you, Kanika. And lastly, Mr. Kala?
Yeah, so recently we've been talking about ESG everywhere. So just put the ESG into your heart, into your culture, and put your into your belief. So that makes you a true ESG. Not just put your company into green color, right? Put your blood, just color your blood with green, so it makes you green.
Tepuk tangan dulu dong. Wow, Mr. Ahmad, we got a lot of inputs for next year's ISF supply chain. I've been hearing about value chain, green financial ecosystem, and green heart with green blood from Mr. Kala. So give us a round of applause for our panelists. And now let's go to the Q&A question. Maybe we take a 3 questioner. You can state your question, where you come from, and Nick. Yes. In the front, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you.
So 3 questions first.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nasser Al-Masri. I'm from Kuwait. I have a question for you, sir. You have done it by yourself. I wonder what will happen to you if you had the government support or the banking support. Are you going to do it better way, or are you going to save more money, or are you going to provide the service in a less, what's so-called charge and so on? The other question is, we as part of the third world, till when are we going to assemble cars made by somebody? When are we going to create our own cars? If you are talking about hydrogen or hybrid or electric, till now we are the followers of the makers, but we are not the makers themselves. I know that we cannot compete with Mercedes or Audi or whatever, but we can create our own logo, our own cars by themselves. Till now we are burning oil in order to produce energy. When are we going to produce energy out of the natural resources? Who has this kind of sun except us? Okay, what about the wind? What about the hydrogen reactors? What about methane gas, thermal energy, even to the nuclear, not weapons, let's say nuclear energy and so on. The idea till now, I as somebody from the third world, from the Arab world, I believe that we are still the followers of the masters. But we are not masters in our own country. Plus, we have enough money, but till now we don't have green loans. We don't talk to the people who are trying to save the nature or the environment, okay? And while we are talking, till now, we did not dictate our own policy on the makers of the cars. How many scholarships or training programs that we got from General Motors or Ford or LG or Samsung or Sony and so on, how many what so-called dollars did they pay for income tax in our own region, not in their own country? What kind of social responsibility and social accountability that we are practicing with them or against them? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, yes, Mr. Kala, the gentleman has very strong point.
Right.
If you can do it with your own and get a half gigawatt,
Yeah.
can you imagine how many gigawatt if the government give extra miles for
You know
your
what?
effort?
I will just answer the number one question, and then the rest, my colleague will answer. Yeah. For question number one, if we got support back then from the banks and government, then we will, by today, we will have more than 2,000 megawatts by now. So the support means like what to make it faster, to make it efficient. So that's why the reason that we complete our first project in almost 8 years. It's supposed to be only 5 years because of this lack of supports. So that's the answer. If we get the support, then we get more megawatts out of the plants. Thank you. Since we are not we are the only currently now we are the only private sector that runs the largest hydropower plants in Indonesia. I don't think I'm the follower. I don't think we are the follower. We can choose who's our off-taker is. Such as like company A came, company B came. Like my experience, we can choose whatever we like. Because the green energy is very rare energy in the world. So we are not the follower.
Right, thank you, Mr. Kala. So Kanika, maybe you can touch a bit about his comment on the local manufacturing and how we can be the master of our own market.
Yeah. No, I think this is a really important point that's been raised, and we can't think about energy just also in the context of emissions, but also in the context of what it means for local communities, what it means for energy security. And the energy security conversation kind of often remains at a very macroeconomic level in terms of what is your import bill. But I think with harnessing renewable energy, as you said, sir, there is the opportunity to become much more energy independent because these are resources that are available in your country. But it is also an opportunity to end energy poverty. And there is no greater insecurity than not having access to any electricity. To have primary health centers that don't have electricity or schools that don't have electricity. So in many ways, harnessing local energy, as you're suggesting, is really a way also to boost energy security. It is a way to be the master of your own destiny, as you may, and it advances many other development priorities as well. So access to energy is really also the golden thread that delivers development, and you're absolutely right that countries across the emerging and developing parts of the world really need to take a more strategic view on how they think about energy. It cannot be stopgap solutions. It cannot just be, you can't preempt how much energy means that you are no longer energy poor. So there are parts of the world that have made large strides in providing access, but access means you have a connection. It doesn't actually mean you have electrons. It doesn't actually mean that you have affordable supply or reliable supply or sustainable sources of supply. So again, it goes back to those issues of import dependence and things like this. So I think that your call for a more strategic view by governments, but then also thinking about what are the knock-on effects of that and how it makes you a much more resilient and independent economy is something that's really that should be prioritized.
I would just add that it's clear to me that the transition to electrification creates opportunities for new companies to disrupt the old business models and the old incumbents and create new champions in new sectors, be it batteries, automobile manufacturer. If you just look at what's happened in the US, the market shares that exist now in the EV sector are completely different to the market shares that existed 10 years ago in the traditional ICE sector. And so I think the first part is belief. I think you need companies and leaders who truly believe in the EV transition. Without that, you won't lead. And then I think secondly is a more sort of cold-blooded assessment of national competencies and national advantages. And again, in the ASEAN region, we see that going quite well. We see in Indonesia investment into the battery supply chain going very well. In Thailand, a lot of inward investment into automobile manufacture. So I think a lot of countries are paying a lot of attention and doing that analysis to identify where their competencies are and attract investment from there.
Sorry, just quickly to add to that list, understanding product market fit is another natural advantage, right? So this is one of the things we've seen where getting electric two-wheelers that are designed and fit for exactly the needs of consumers in Indonesia, in ASEAN, is not really being done. So this, again, to Albert's point, this creates this opportunity to shift into the leader position for companies that are willing to, take some risks, like our friend over here.
All right, since we have a constraint of time, before we play the video, we would like to have the closing remarks from Pak Rahmat to invite our distinguished guests to come to ISF 2024.
Before that, I would like to quickly add to the discussion that the gentleman asked. For Indonesia, I think we want to be masters of our own land, Lord in our domain. We started with local content requirements. We also do the downstream policy. So our resources has to be value added domestically, and we add local content requirements. And we started now to have our own brands. Start with two-wheelers. Four-wheelers, not yet, but two-wheelers is 6 times more than four-wheelers in Indonesia. So we start having domestic brands. With that, of course, you need to be able to stand before, crawl first, stand, and then run, right? So we have to do it step by step. So yes, but the intention is we have to be the king in our own domain, Pak. Again, for what Pak Anthony said, in September this year, we do Sustainability Forum. We would like to have a discussion, and Indonesia, we believe, have a very strong say in this because we have critical mineral, we have energy, and we are developing countries. So a lot of our stories may be relevant to other countries. And next year, we want to do the same thing, hopefully with more. This year, we do it, about 40 people, delegates from 40 countries come. And next year, hopefully, maybe not like COP, but somewhat like COP, and will be a pre-COP discussion. So we'll have much more meaningful discussion in COP next year. So looking forward to seeing you in Indonesia in September for ISF. Thank you.
the panelists, you can stand in front. Pak Rahmat will give some token of appreciation on behalf of the committee, and we will see you in ISF next year.